All right, guys, welcome. This is a very full house here. How many of you are Zelda fans? All right. So my name is Dr. Anthony Bean, and I am a clinical psychologist here in Texas. I run a nonprofit group up in Fort Worth, Texas, and we do a bunch of geek therapy and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. I also usually work a little bit more with the geeks, nerds, and pretty much anyone who falls under that spectrum, including video games. And I have some very esteemed panelists here. Some of them have written for the book, and some of them are just so knowledgeable I could not have them here. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Stephen Daniel. I am an assistant professor at Appalachian State University in the mountains of Boone, North Carolina. So when you say the Boonies, it is actually the reality over there. I want to do a little quick pitch. We are working with streamers, and especially within toxicity, within chat rooms and so forth. So if you are a streamer, and especially if you are going to PAX East or West, we want to talk to you. We're really trying to help communities out, and any aspiring streamers out there, give them a safer place to work. So we're really trying to help out, get some publishable, applicable results. So, and I also wrote a chapter in this book.
Hello, my name is Louisa Graham. I am a PhD student at the University of West Georgia, and I also wrote a chapter for the book. And at the moment, I'm interested in looking at the experiences of gamers, especially with their avatars, player characters, and just seeing how their parts of their personalities come through design, narratives, what I like to call transcendent play at the moment, quote unquote. So I'm super happy to be here. This is my first PAX South ever, and it's been super awesome. Thank you so much, and ready to have a lot of fun on this panel and talk Zelda.
I'm Dr. Ryan Kelly. I'm a psychologist in Charlotte, North Carolina, so we're better than some. Like, you're a little better than some? Does that make sense?
Y'all brush your teeth.
Y'all brush our teeth. I'm the co-founder of Geeks Like Us. It's a media company that basically celebrates everything geek, largely, unapologetic enthusiasm and the passion and love and focus that we can have towards these things like Zelda that we can wind up turning into very productive things that help the world, help our lives, and make it amazing. Like other people on this panel, I use a lot of video games, tabletop games, and so on for therapeutic reasons.
Well, I am Rafael Bucamonso, better known around these parts as Dr. B. I am the clinical director of a couple of things. One, most importantly, the Take This mental health nonprofit that runs all of the AFK rooms worldwide. Who's been to the AFK room? Yeah! For those of you who haven't, it's room 220 at this show. Go in. It is the most boring room at the show by design. It's amazingly quiet. But I also am the co-founder of a geek therapy clinic in Seattle called Save Point Behavioral Health, because you can always return to the Save Point. And I am also a trainer for the applied use of role-playing games in therapeutic settings, and I'm going to be teaching a bunch of clinicians next week how to geek out with D&D, but therapeutically. And so, yeah. Also, what's a Zelda? I don't know.
It's a rare growth that you develop. Oh, that's not it?
No, okay.
I think I got a green for that.
Should I leave?
No?
Okay, I'll sit.
Sit down.
Out of my growths. Got it.
All right, so one of the big things is we love the franchise of Zelda, obviously, as much as all of you did. So we actually decided to, about a year and a half ago, create a book just dedicated towards the psychology of The Legend of Zelda and all of the different components that go into it. I definitely want to make a very big point that this book would have never been able to be made without as much love for this game has happened over the years. And of course, all 700 or something. Is that our max here? Right?
No.
There's a lot of you. All right, so there's a lot of you. So the book actually comes out next month. Finally, we've been talking about this now across 3 PAXs, and we finally have a release date of February 19th. And this is the cover. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this. There are some people who are
Mostly tears.
Mostly tears. Yeah. But some of the people had to rewrite their chapters multiple times, and it was really entertaining for them to do that. Unfortunately, Shane is not here, so he can't combat that at all. But one of the big things is when we talk about the psychology of The Legend of Zelda, we want to focus in on the ideas that make us love this game. Why do we keep on playing it after all these years? In some facets, it's the same game, just different mechanics, different aspects added to it, but has the same premise. But of course, one of the big things, especially Stephen's most favorite part, is...
No, no!
This is true.
Kill it with fire.
And of course, for anyone who has played Breath of the Wild, getting it's just the best one overall. Absolutely. So the forthcoming chapters that are actually in this book all happen to correlate or go around these types of ideas. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of them based on the people that are here. And so we're going to talk about the personal shadow, the archetypal attraction, the 5 stages of grief, the heroic journey, post-traumatic growth, and we had one more person who unfortunately was unable to come on up, so we're going to try to talk about feminism. It's going to be great, guys. A bunch of guys talking about something that we shouldn't have access to, right? So we're going to probably make Doc B do that one.
That's good. Is that right, Lisa? Did I say right?
So one of the big things of what we want to definitely talk about is the immersive quality of The Legend of Zelda, how it has continuously, as it's gone through its different stages across the different platforms, has been able to increase the immersive qualities. And so I just wanted to kind of give this and some of these questions right here to the panelists to kind of talk a little bit more about these qualities and these questions that they have. We're going to let Ryan start.
Just to comment on one of these. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, make it happen. Come on, Link.
Okay, and just give my opinion on one? Here I go. So, I'm going to choose, why are we drawn to this game? Yep, sorry buddy. First choice.
What you didn't see is Dr. B was like, son of a gun,
Yeah, that's right. So, everybody has their preference for a game, and I think what I love about this game and what I think draws people to it is an allegory of all our lives. It can be an allegory for something that happened today. It can be an allegory where Ganon represents just a tough thing today. It could be an allegory for having to deal with having an abusive father. It can be an allegory for depression. It's the best projective game to me. It's a repeated story. And for each thing, it has all these very important components. So I'll be speaking more about post-traumatic growth and post-traumatic stress. But the idea is we all have our own narrative, and we replay it over and over and over in our head. Same characters, same items, things tweaking up a little bit. And there are times where it's tough, and it's more of a Majora's Mask type of narrative. And then there are other times where it's more Breath of the Wild, arena. So this one, to me, is people are playing it. It's reliable, it's predictable. There's characters that we understand. They represent us or people we know. There's relationships. It's I can't imagine a better game that would say, how do you go through life and how do you grow without, suffering loss of the Deku tree, getting a shield, leveling up, coming to an obstacle instead of getting up, beating that temple, finding a way to get past it with a new item. So I think we play it because it reflects our own growth and the potential for more.
And so what he's kind of talking a little bit more about is the projection upon the character and the immersive state of consciousness that we automatically project onto Link, because Link is mute, as you know, throughout all the games. And the creators actually said that there was a reason for that, so you would project harder onto Link and make it him a little bit more about you overall. So, Stephen.
Well, as a communication scholar, and more specifically one that does work in communication technology, one of the areas that we are very interested in is a phenomenon called that is this immersion quality that you actually feel like you are in the story. And this goes a lot with this identity projection that you're mentioning. In that because I feel like Link, because I feel like I want to go on this journey, it really feels like I'm in the story. So when I'm playing Breath of the Wild, for instance, I can get lost and probably way later in the night than I wanted. There's so many collectibles that I'm like, I think I can get to that. Oh, it's 4 a.m. Maybe I should get some sleep. But that's the immersion quality, and that's what we love so much about it, is that we can be transported. And the best games have that ability, is that ability to be transported. So again, that's one of the reasons I think it is part of that engrossing environment.
Lisa?
Sure. I suppose also linking the aspect of...
Thank you.
linking that back in, chain that up. So I would say I'm a psychology student, so I'm very interested in the phenomena, the experience of engaging with the game environment, the game space. How are we getting immersed? How are we connecting with the game? And I find that the Legend of Zelda series in particular, I like to use the word resonance, that there's something reaching out to us, like say, why are we so driven to complete the quest, to find the Triforce shards, to find Ganon and help Hyrule again? And really, again, I find that there's, I think too, with my own chapters talking about personal shadow, that there's kind of something reflecting back to us in our own day-to-day lives, that we see something like, oh, okay, maybe I'm having my own quest that I'm on, maybe I'm facing some kind of trial, maybe there's a treasure at the very end of there too, and hopefully you can hold your Triforce up high and show it for all to see. And sound effects included. So I guess, again, I find personally just so much resonance with this series, and being able to link up psychology and a little bit of my own experience with it was just so incredible, and I'm very happy to share it.
How about you, Duffy?
Oh, wow, okay. This was an unexpected question. It comes down to a couple things for me. Hope. You know, one of the messages we have to take this is, I mean, there's a reason our slogan is "It's dangerous to go alone." And ultimately, every Zelda story is about hope. Hope that things can get better. Hope that you can improve. Hope that you can eventually triumph. And, I mean, that's really what it comes down to for me. That there is always hope. And that is one of the fundamental cornerstones of therapy, of mental wellness, and just an amazing lesson to learn throughout life. Never does hope truly go away.
It's a perfect segue.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that was.
I'm profound.
It is a perfect segue into this, because it's actually Doc Bean's.
Oh, okay, wow. That I didn't actually know was coming up in the first thing. So let's segue from that. Let's talk about hope. Because ultimately, you know, none of us go through life without obstacles. And, you know, honestly, none of us should. Obstacles are important. You know, I work in, one of my offices is in a wealthy suburb of Seattle, where there are parents who have the financial and physical capabilities to do what every parent dreams about, and that's protecting their children from harm and stress. Unfortunately, for the absolute best of reasons, this can backfire. Because without stress, to a certain degree, without a certain degree of obstacles and figuring things out for yourself a little bit. Resilience is never developed. And some of the kids who come to me at that point, they are so anxious because they have this internalized belief they can't do it. Whatever it may be. Whether it's getting through school, whether it's getting themselves out of bed in the morning, they have internalized this belief that they are not capable. Now there's a concept in psychology called locus of control, and it's a very important one. Now we can either have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control, and what that means is that an external locus of control, the world dictates my fate, the world dictates my actions. Link does not have an external locus of control. Link believes that he is capable. And that's one of the best lessons from all of this. Like over and over and over and over and over again, Link pulls through and tries hard because of this internalized belief. And that's why obstacles are actually a little important in dealing with this. And I'm going to date myself because I still have my gold copy of Zelda 1.
Yeah, buddy.
As well, this is pure bragging right here. My first 70 issues of Nintendo Power.
Oh! She's a hoarder.
Oh yeah. For that I am? Oh no, issue number 1 is
one.
framed on my wall. But if for those of you who played the original, remember the progressive level of difficulty that existed. I mean, the first dungeon, it's kind of a breeze. But there's an increasing level of difficulty that you are learning how to overcome in small ways. They don't just throw you in the 8th dungeon and expect you to be okay with that. There's too many dynamics you have to learn along the way. And so that's one of the great lessons that this teaches us is that, 1, obstacles are important. 2, progressing with obstacles is important so we don't take on too much at once, but also community. Community and others are a protective factor in our own mental health. And Link didn't do it alone. What's the very first scene from the very first game? You arrive on that first screen, you go in the cave to the north, and what do they say? It's dangerous to go alone, take this. Link has help throughout all the games. And there's an important lesson there too. None of us do it alone. Not a single one of us triumphs over any adversity completely isolated. And those two fundamental truths, that we have to overcome some stress, we have to work with others for our own personal success, those are two of the most important lessons in our own mental wellness throughout life, and it's demonstrated in every game.
Continue.
But beyond that, there's also this internalized locus of control idea has some other protective value in that we interpret things outside of ourselves a lot of the time as not our fault. Bad things can be situational. We can fail not because we suck, but maybe we made a mistake or something got in the way, and that's something we also see in these games. And Link has friends to help him through that. So just those 3 things, if you all can take those away, that 1, well, I guess I started this with 4, so there's always hope. Things can all, I don't just mean that as a platitude, because if I don't believe that, I need to change careers. It's true that there's always hope that our lives can get better. But that just because something is tough and it hurts doesn't mean we're not handling it. Sometimes that means we are handling it. That our community helps us handle it, and we will grow with time. And also sometimes things, they're just not our fault. Things just happen.
I think it's very well put. I appreciate that, as do I think everyone else here. So, the next big thing is the archetypal chapter, and that is what I wrote specifically. So the idea of archetypes are they are symbolic with universal meaning on this. So they can mean lots of different things. We have symbols all throughout our lives. There are tons of symbols in the game, way more than what I could fit into a chapter. Literally, you just see them. If you've played all the games, you'll just see them come up again and again and again. And those symbols have very important power that we play as, that we see and we use as supports, and the ability to then intake that symbol and then use it going forward. So one of the ideas that when we play as a video gamer, and the way that I personally use it clinically is through a kind of like a 7 paths of valor type style. So we use it through a symbolic play and fantasy play style. And it always focuses on, whenever we start a video game, we always start off as an orphan archetype. The orphan archetype is someone who's been like cast out, had something bad happen to them, which they need to have post-traumatic growth, and be able to overcome that and become their own personal hero. They have to go through a certain journey. This is very, very much true, I think, for all video games. And the idea specifically for Legend of Zelda is Link has to go through his challenges, more specifically based on the symbolism of all of the temples. Now, if you all recall in Ocarina of Time, Water Temple, go ahead and exactly. It is one of the most beloved and hated temples in probably the entire series. And that is because it's hard, it's annoying, yet it also has a very big spirituality of a rewashing, reborn symbolism for Link as he grows into that personal hero. So based on the model that I kind of work from clinically, it works as Link is at the bottom, where he is the orphan, and you have to travel through one of these 7 paths of archetypes. So the warrior, healer, ranger, rogue, spellcaster, engineer, or athlete. More specifically, Link uses more of a ranger, warrior, or spellcaster. He can use all 3. There's usually one a little bit more primary versus tertiary and secondary. So depending on the way that you play the game, depends on the way that you are going to beat the game. Everyone does it a little bit differently, but there are definitely a lot of different archetypal similarities as we play through this one. And,
Does engineering food count in Breath of the Wild? Because I've made some pretty delicious dishes. And some pretty dubious ones, too.
Mushrooms are tricky, man.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the idea of Link as a model for PTSD.
Sure. Raise your hand if you've heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. You have? Oh, 20, yeah. Great. If anybody up here didn't, we'd have a problem. Raise your hand if you've heard of post-traumatic growth. Okay. So here's reality. Life is hard, and things happen. And sometimes we succeed, and sometimes we fail. We are adaptive creatures by nature. In fact, what I tell a lot of my clients is, you know, let's say they're 15, it's not like they've been adapting to the world for 15 years. That brain has come millions of years. That genetic code has been in the coldest of colds, the hottest of hots, predators, bacteria, comets. I mean, it has dealt with so much adversity, and then it has become you. And you think you're just taking it on, like, well, I have to figure everything out. You are programmed to succeed. You are programmed to thrive. You are programmed to grow. But there are times where adversity can be very great, or it can happen, like in Link's case, where we're very young, and we don't have the developmental tools quite yet to be able to deal with it. And especially when we're vulnerable, if trauma occurs, then it can surface as PTSD, where we have flashbacks and we can't move forward, and it stunts some of our developmental growth psychologically. But if we can find a way to hone it and use that adversity, it can actually propel us forward, which is what Link does. So Link, who thinks Link has an easy life? Raise your hand if you think it's, I think it's funny there's one guy who's like, I think it's pretty easy. No, it's, I would admire that. Wait, of course, there it is.
Thank you.
Come on. No, I'm just kidding. So what? Oh, Wind Waker was a little easier. Grandma's sister-in-law, that's true. So, it's nice having a meme on to help you out. So, you know, pretty much in every iteration, Wind Waker not as much, I suppose, is orphan, right? He's orphan. We have varying levels of how did he lose his parents. I mean, the lore changes a bit when you have the weird comic book one. And like, what was the comic book one with the weird dad? It just gets weird out there.
No comment.
No comment, yeah. But he never makes himself a victim, right? We always have a choice. We can either view ourselves as a victim, or we can view ourselves as a survivor. And through the realm of survivor, we have the option of being a hero as well. And every time he faces adversity, from the moment the game starts and he wakes up not knowing where he is, whether it be in that tree, alone, whether it be the, is it the rejuvenation chamber? Is that what it's called in Breath of the Wild? Is that what it's called? Resurrection, thank you. So it's, from the moment in there, he's problem solving, right? And he takes these moments to propel him forward. He wears it like a I mean, it's his fuel, that's what gets him going. So post-traumatic growth is what we want to deal with in adversity, and with, do you want to speak to the...
I was going to say, it's almost like, yes, courage.
Well, and we'll go there. So, you have the Triforce, you got wisdom, and so if you're looking at this, wisdom, courage, and power. And there's a quote that I love, is Maya Angelou, where it says that of all the traits, courage is the most important. Because without courage, we can practice no other trait with consistency. You have to have courage for everything. If you're honest, but you're not courageous enough to be honest, you won't be honest. For courage, Link is the action. He's the one who wakes up, knows there will be another failure, but tries anyway. You have the game over, you bring it back in. So, there are a number of allegories of post-traumatic growth. Batman is one that's commonly used, though I personally find that debatable. But Link is the perfect allegory for that, dealing with adversity and succeeding from it.
Well put.
I feel like you're describing my encounters with lions.
Maybe.
Except there's a lot more failure.
That's PTSD.
Yeah.
But you panic, full-blown panic attacks.
Yeah.
You just use the time feature. You don't know that.
One of the big things that we see in The Legend of Zelda is actually Zelda coming into her own across all of the different games that are coming out of there. One of the ideas is that she changes as she goes through all of these games, and in the Breath of the Wild, we've actually seen her become something that we haven't seen her ever become. More strong, more being able to take care of herself, and actually rejection of masculine through, if you guys have found the movies and stuff like that, to be able to, she actually tries to push Link away, saying, I can do this on my own. She rejects her princessness and wants to be more of a researcher and a scholar. This is a huge, huge improvement from where we have used to seeing a lot of damsels in distress through video games. We're actually seeing Zelda take a turn where maybe we actually will get a Legend of Zelda saving Link at some point, which would be very entertaining, I think. But also, one of the big things that we were talking about last night is we actually don't think Link would be able to save anything without Zelda. And the ability to have Zelda in that game is the whole reason that he can actually overcome Ganon or the power.
Can I do my little theory? The CBT triangle?
Do your CBT thing.
Here's the thought, and I would love for you to take this with you. Raise your hand if you've heard of the CBT triangle. Right. So, here's that. I love that you have. Here's the way humans work, right? We have thoughts, we have feelings, which is largely neurochemistry, right? Serotonin feel satisfied, oxytocin feel like a belongingness, dopamine feel pleasure, cortisol feel anxious. Those are feelings. We have our thoughts, and we have our behaviors. All of those intertwine. If my brain releases a bunch of cortisol or adrenaline that gets my heart rate up, I get anxious and tense, well then my thoughts are probably going to be what if thoughts. What if something dangerous happens? What if I fail? What if I mess up? And then those are going to change my behavior. I'm going to not try. I'm going to avoid it. And it's actually going to make me feel even more anxious. And it's a vicious cycle. Well, we were talking that actually I feel like the Triforce fits perfectly with that. The top being wisdom, which would be our thoughts and logic. Power being feelings, because let's face it, as inaccurate as they can be, feelings are incredibly powerful, and ultimately the thing that has the most power. And then behavior or action is courage. So, with wisdom being the top tier. So in every situation, Zelda can hold off Ganon. She can ultimately gives him the light or the tool that he can finally banish Ganon, but Link can't do anything without Zelda. There's nothing. It's just action. So the thought and the wisdom that he kind of work out. So that's why it's the Legend of Zelda. It's supposed to be Legend of Link.
You know, I hate the fact that you came up with that and I'm a CBT practitioner.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about that last night too.
Man.
Basically, kind of in a brief nutshell, is you actually, courage is not enough. You have to have the wisdom and how to wield it powerfully in order to make sure that you have your power in check. And that's, I think, the big thing that we're kind of all overall talking about. Now we have the fun one.
Oh, yeah.
I was saying, now I get to lighten the mood by talking about Majora's Mask.
Let's talk about that.
And by the way, this person in the front who wooed not only Majora's Mask, but Kubler Ross's Stages of Grief, BFF, man. I'm just saying. I love this chapter. I had two amazing authors that worked with me on it, and they were incredible. They're fantastic writers. I was the lone calm person that decided that I was going to take every single piece of dialogue in Majora's Mask and code. So I coded, yeah, research is fun, everybody. So I coded for it, and this was fresh off a publication that I wrote about a certain Game of Thrones character that died, and we were looking on Twitter to see how people were reacting and using these Kubler-Ross's Stages of Grief. I say certain Game of Thrones character because I spoiled it once, not at PAX, that would have been horrible, but it would happen in my office, and the poor young student started crying in my office. So
this story.
It's not like it's the first time that's ever happened in my office, making somebody cry, but you know, that was the first time from a non-fictional character, or excuse me, fictional character. Wow. Okay. He's real to me. Majora's Mask is one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game. And who's heard of Kubler-Ross's Stages of Grief? Okay, most of us have. If you're not familiar, it's 5 stages through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross started this model, she was first and foremost saying that this isn't necessarily in order. It can be, but at the same time, there are a lot of variables that come into play. We might experience one several times. We may skip some altogether, like we found in our Game of Thrones study, that everybody skipped right over denial and went straight into depression. And so that happens, though. You know, when you're grieving, that happens quite a lot. Is, you know, you may have some of those feelings that you may skip a couple things. And so I first got inspired by this chapter when I got the call to look at it, was from a YouTube video by Peanut Butter Gamer and Matt Pat from Game Theory. Yeah. And I loved it. And to this day, they did a tremendous job of putting it together. It made writing the chapter a lot easier. So if you're watching, you're probably not. Thanks, guys. It's really interesting, though, because when I was looking over this, I said, okay, they said, let's put all the 5 stages of grief in with the Kubler-Ross model. So denial was linked with Clock Town, anger was linked with the Deku Palace, bargaining with Snowhead, the Great Bay with depression, and acceptance with Icona Valley. I haven't written it. I just wanted to make sure I got them all down, so, you know, forgive me. And in this case, I said, okay, let's test that. So our authors got to work, we started coding, we started writing, and we looked through and found they were mostly right. And I'm not saying I'm calling you out, you're wrong. What I'm trying to get at here is science is messy. And I think a lot of people may understand that, but a lot of people may not. And the interesting thing within the Kubler-Ross Stages of Grief is, again, Kubler-Ross never said that they're going to happen in order. So they're actually going to happen in different variations. And you can see it all over the place. In fact, the game developer said it wasn't really intended that way. There were some areas of that. So, like Darmani, for example, in Snowhead, exemplifies bargaining. That was kind of the theme, right? And that was the stages of grief that we assume with that particular land. Now, that happens with Rudo as well, in terms of bargaining. So it happens all over the place, and depression is all over the place. So again, one of the things we talked about is there are stages that are involved with every single section within Termina. And we wanted to talk about that. So we thought it was really interesting that goes along with it. This also has to do with the distorted view I'm looking on here in terms of the loss of our fairy friend. Or, well, I don't know if we call him friend. Yeah, maybe? See, some people are, yeah, some people are all on board, other people are like, no. And I think I like this game so much because a lot of the characters are reoccurring. So you see the same ones from Ocarina of Time. But in Kubler-Ross, she talks about a distorted view of things. So you see things that you saw in Ocarina of Time, but they're a little bit different. And that's an exemplification of what you might experience if you're going through trauma, if you're going through this particular area of grief. And this is important for us to realize is if we're going through grief, we may see the same people, we may see the same places, but they're just a little different. So that's really one of the areas that we tried to hit on with our chapter. The last thing I want to mention is Carrie Shepard, who was one of our authors, decided to do something with masks. No idea about what he was talking about when he proposed this idea, but he did something really cool with it. He said, I'm going to do masks per the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And I'm like, okay, do tell. So he said, what about the Deku mask? The Deku mask could represent, in this case, denial. Because Link is in shock at the beginning of the game when he is turned into a Deku. He's just like, oh, I'm a Deku now. I've got to get rid of this, right? I've got to make sure that I'm back to where I was. And even when he gets rid of the Deku mask, things aren't the same. So that was one of the masks. Now my personal favorite wasn't actually a mask, was one that's really underappreciated, which is bargaining. Bargaining in this case looks for a higher power of some sort to say, bring this loved one back to me. And in this case, we looked at the ocarina as an example with the 3-day mechanic. And it's bargaining to that higher power of the ocarina to say, please, let's do this again. Let's try this again. And that's a really cool part in the book. I'm not going to go over the whole thing because then you just have to get it. Shameless plug. Okay. So, what do we learn from this? Death is complicated. And I like researching this kind of stuff because it is complicated. And we have different struggles with it, whether we're depressed or angry, hopefully not happy. Although another certain Game of Thrones character would be a very interesting study in terms of somebody being relieved that it actually happened. But this is kind of the point of that, again, this is a complicated emotion, this is a complicated subject, and yeah, I love doing this chapter, and like I said, I hope you all get a chance to read it.
Thank you very much. All right. So now we get to hear from, this is going to be the first time she's ever spoken, so give her some credit here, okay? Tell us.
All right. So, my chapter was on the personal shadow and Link's journey, especially to overcome his own inner darkness and to face off with his own manifestation of his personal shadow being Dark Link. And I was when I began this chapter, intriguingly, despite the pink hair, I'm very fascinated by Jung's conceptualization of the personal shadow and what parts of ourselves are we not aware of? What are the kind of dragons that are in the dark cave in our innermost mind that we know or we may not know? And Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung presented this model of the psyche that presents a picture of the personality as one that's a paradoxical but harmonious balance of light and darkness, conscious aspects of oneself, one's personality, and what's underneath the surface, what's in the unconscious, the dark subterranean realm, as it were. And in our day-to-day life, we have sort of a mask. We have a persona. We have a figure of ourselves that we present to the world, and that, you know, we want to seem very nice to other people. We want to be presentable. We kind of want to be liked, sometimes at least. And as far as maybe other parts we may not know about there, that would be personal shadow territory. So with that, that could be, and when darkness and shadow come up as far as terminology, Jung, it didn't mean so. It's not evil. It's not like your evil doppelgangers per se. It's more like the parts of yourself that are hidden deep in the shadows. It's literally the reverse of the mirror, as it were, kind of like if you were looking behind the mirror.
It's the parts that you reject of your own self.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so with Link's journey, he literally faces his own personal shadow in Dark Link, and my first experience personally in encountering Dark Link would be in Ocarina of Time in the Water Temple, which is, I love how there's so much symbolism there, because it's in a water temple, and what does water do? It reflects, and it's also deep. And Jung always loved to use the metaphorical imagery of water when you're going down into the unconscious, dark parts of one's self, one's psyche. And so Link is literally doing this, and in a way the player can be too. So like, you're in the room, and as you see with Dark Link, he doesn't initially do anything. And the significant moment is when you engage with Dark Link. He chooses to confront his personal shadow. And Jung expresses that for ourselves and our own development and growth of ourself, our whole personality, our harmonious unity of personality, that we can't just take our personal shadow and lock it behind a boss door, lock the key, and then throw it away and never look at it again. You kind of gotta face it at some point. So you kind of got to go into the cave and face the beast, the dragon, and in this case, the shadow. So it's only after Link is able to lock swords with Dark Link and win in this duel that he's able to proceed to complete the trial of courage in the adventure of Link, or to continue through the water temple, or traversing the worlds of light and dark in Link to the Past and whatnot, which in Link to the Past it's especially interesting because we have a literal light and dark world in there too. So on the surface it's light and bright, very idyllic in Hyrule. So that's very typical of, say, a persona. It looks very nice, it's very peaceful, but under the surface in the dark world, it's not as pretty maybe. The cuckoos are skeleton thingies, and instead of we know somewhere deep inside they're the dangerous ones, the cuckoos. they are.
Which also respond when you attack.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, do not
Always
anger.
chickens.
I think that's just in video games in general. Don't attack chickens.
Yeah, leave them alone.
And everywhere you go in video games, attacking chickens just seems like it's going to be a bad time.
Yeah, that's a good rule for it.
It doesn't really give you good chicken. So one of the big things here that I wanted to make sure that we did is put everybody up on that was on the panel up on here in case you guys ever have questions for us. I want to also say that there are 3 business cards hidden somewhere underneath these chairs. And if you have one, I actually have these fun little advanced review copies of the book.
You're pulling it over?
We're gonna, you people are gonna get books.
You get a book.
If
You
you
get a book.
find
You
it.
get a book. Nobody else. That's it.
3 people.
3 people.
I hit them.
Look hard, they are. They're
You may have hidden them too well.
Oh,
I
about
tried
those?
to make sure they were poking out.
You have one?
There's one
we got one. We got one.
All right.
There's two more over there.
This is going a lot
Should
better
we
than
start
last.
singing I Got a Golden Ticket?
Wes had a really hard time. Oh, we got another one? Did you see
Both of them over there.
both of them? You got them? So they should say the Telos Project or Being Psychon. Is it a business card?
Did somebody leave other contest stuff there?
What's that one? What's that?
We need to coordinate with other
Yeah,
panelists.
no kidding. Past panels. It should say the Telos Project and it should have a number on the back of it. Or the Being Fetch Sites. Those are the only cards I have.
Everybody drop to your knees and start looking under that. It's totally dignified.
We talked about that terminology, Dr. D.
And this is why we have so much fun.
Right. Also, so I'm going to be asking a random Zelda question on my Twitter. And I'm going to pick, for whoever answers, I'm going to pick a random one and they'll get an Ocarina of Time. Like a blue Ocarina of Time. So be looking for it. We'll be here until Sunday, so once you get it, I'll make sure to sync up with you and get it to you.
Absolutely. And the last thing is we wanted to open it up for questions, but the other thing that I wanted to definitely point out is Dr. Cooper, who is not here, has books in case you wanted to purchase them, which are The Parent's Guide to Video Games.
So good.
Which is a good book. I have mine book over there, The Working Therapeutically with Video Gamers. And then magically the publisher accidentally sent me some of these fun books a month ahead of time that I can sell to you according to them. So there are people, if you want a copy, we can make that happen and you'll get it a month before it comes out. Okay. For those who do not make it to the copies,
You got those okay?
we're going to put those there. For those who do not have it, we also have Mandela gave me bookmarks and gives you 10% off of the book. You buy it from their website and they will have it shipped over to you. Take all of these things with you because I don't want to take them home. Okay?
So, and I've got a request real quick before questions. So my wife always asks me how these go, and I'll say they went really poorly, and she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I'm not being real, but now it's turned into a thing where if we can, in a little bit, I'd love to take a video of everybody, and when I say go, I just want you to boo. Like, we were the worst. Hit animosity. Kids are in here, but hit mean. Yeah. Are we good? Okay, yeah.
Just let us have it.
They were a little too happy about it.
All right, you ready? Go ahead.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you. You're going to tell we like to have fun.
You're welcome. We're glad we can tune you out.
We got one of the business cards. Please come up and see me and just show it to me so I can make sure I give you one of the advanced copies. They only made about 50 of these books, and they have small, slight errors in them, so just like Navi's just not in the right place or something like that. But they only made about 50. So whoever gets one of the business cards, you kind of get one of those. And we have 4 minutes, so I think we can field one.
But we'll hang on.
We'll hang out.
Or we'll hang out after, I guess.
No pressure.
Her mic is not on.
I would
We
project.
can repeat the question.
Yeah, well, we can hear it.
I know you can hear me.
And we'll repeat it.
I can hear
Oh, there it goes.
Hi.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey! Hello. Hi, my name is Mojo, and I'm from a team of philanthropists called the Zelda team. And I just wanted to say that was very cruel of you to tease us about Tingle and not get to it. Tell us about the joy of Tingle just for a moment. Please. Please, he's my favorite.
You're like, I'm not leaving until you do it.
I love Pink
Not
House.
really weird, the microphone. I love Tingle because he's so wacky. And one of the basic things is he is a very great comic relief within the game. And I think it's well needed since sometimes if you think about the game from a psychological standpoint, it's pretty heavy at times.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things is having him just dance around and throw things in the air and then sell you something, and you're like, all right, I'll buy it. It's like pity. Yeah, it's almost like a pity buy. You guys have any addition to that? No? No? Okay. We will field more questions out there just because we're going to have to get this one set up for the next one. But
Thank you very much.